We are living in an amazing, amazing time, and it is truly a wonderful life. Life is beautiful, my friends. So, if you're in a mood to talk about things of an uplifting, positive nature, why being creators is one of the most amazing things that one can be, then you're going to want to keep it right here. So here it is, the last couple of days of 2023, and we've been through a whirlwind of holidays, a couple days away from the new year, the celebration that brings, and I thought I would just reflect a little bit about this year, 2023, and how great it's been overall. And sure, there's been some hard things that have happened for me, for you, I'm sure, but it is what we make it, right? And every day that we wake up and we're still here on God's green, beautiful earth is another amazing day. And that is what I would like to focus on, is just the fact that life is worth living, regardless of the hard things that come our way. Because we can be doing everything right. We can be treating people well. We can be working hard. We can be living our values to the fullest and still have bad things happen to us. And in the end, it's our decision, right? How we let those things affect us. Now, earlier this year, I believe it was May 1st, spring is in full swing and the year is still relatively young, right? Well, I lost a friend to suicide, and this person seemed to have it all together. He was liked, seemed to have good health, beautiful family, good job. Whenever I talked with him, he was always gung-ho and optimistic. He had family who loved and admired him, and he looked outside of himself. He was always helping others. He served in his community, and if you were to ask me, out of everyone you know, who are you most worried about, their mental health, this person would have been on the bottom of that list for sure. And to my horror, I found out that he did make that ultimate decision to end his life. And obviously everyone has things that they're dealing with that we don't see on the outside, and we don't appreciate. We don't understand the strains that people are working under. We don't, just because someone puts on a happy face and seems to have it all together, doesn't mean that they aren't, subject to demons. Sometimes that level of excellence that we require from ourselves, that standard of just perfection, when it's not met, and we can see that our life is going to be different than what we thought it would be, or we told ourselves that I'd sooner die than let this happen, or whatever, and that thing happens, and we just don't know how to deal with it. That's not part of our identity. That's not what we imagine for ourselves. In a moment of weakness, one might, and in this case, I believe did, make a huge mistake. And that reminds me of an amazing film that I watched on early Christmas morning as I was helping put together the last minute kind of preparations, the things that Santa doesn't do because he's too busy. I was watching It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, circa 1945 or something. It's an old one. It's a good one. And if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, turn this off, go watch it, come back, because I'm about to let it all roll. I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna dissect it, and we're gonna talk about it and kind of draw some correlations to what I was just talking about. So essentially, It's a Wonderful Life is about a man, George Bailey, who at the beginning of the episode you hear these voices of people praying for this George Bailey, and you hear the voices of God and other heavenly beings, angels, if you will, talking about, hey, we're getting a lot of prayers for this one man. What can we do? And then they identify a particular angel who hasn't yet received his wings and felt like this was a good opportunity for him to go help this George Bailey and earn his wings. And so, in preparation for him to go down to earth to help this man, they run him through his life, from when he was, 10, 11, 12 years old, and he saved his younger brother from drowning because they were sledding and onto an icy lake, and the brother fell into the water and was going to drown if George hadn't jumped in and saved him. He lost hearing in one ear as a result. And there were just multiple scenarios that he went through his life. He was a big dreamer. He wanted to travel. He wanted to get out of that small town. He wanted to do big things. He had a vision for his life that was grand. Yet he was a good man, and he cared ultimately more about others than himself. So when his father's business, the savings and loan company, was in trouble, he decided to stay back and help and put off his dream of college and travel, and instead, paved the way for his brother to do that. And with the idea that his brother would come back, his younger brother, after graduating college, and he would take George's place running the family business, which was a huge help to the community, because if they didn't have this savings and loan, they'd have to deal with the evil banker, Mr. Potter, and it was just a necessary piece to this community's survival. And so, anyways, his brother came home from college, and guess what? Surprise, surprise, he was married. And his wife, her father, had an amazing opportunity for her new husband, George Bailey's younger brother, to work for his father. And the younger brother still knew he was, it was his turn to sacrifice, and he was willing to do that. But George Bailey, being the amazing guy that he was, told him to essentially you go take that job. Don't worry about it. And put others in front of himself once again. And, other real world things happen. He fell in love with, a woman from his small town, and she wanted to stay there and start a family, and he sacrificed his dreams to do that, knowing that that was really what he wanted at that time. But suffice it to say, there was still part of him that wished he could have at least gone on an amazing honeymoon. But right when he was about to do that, with all the money he had saved up, there was a run on the bank, with the depression or whatever. And so it was his little savings and loan was about to go under, but he stepped in and used his own money to kind of keep the business afloat, as people were basically saying, okay, I'm taking out my deposit in this savings and loan because I'm worried that it's just going to disappear, or I don't know where my next money is going to come from. And he was able to make it work, and miraculously they stayed in business until one day, they were clipping along the business, and his uncle and business partner was a little absent-minded at times, had a big deposit to take to the bank to pay their bills, because in the end they were under the thumb of this Mr. Potter. They had loans open to him or whatever, and if they couldn't pay it, then he would be able to foreclose on them, and the savings and loan would be no more, right? Well, when this absent-minded uncle went to go make this deposit, he had it folded into a newspaper, the cash, and ran into this Mr. Potter and inadvertently handed him the bundled up newspaper to kind of make a point about, hey, look at this news article. And then when he went up to the teller window to make the payment, guess what? The money was gone, and he couldn't remember where he had put it. Did I leave it back at the business, at my home? Did I drop it along the way? It just slipped his mind. He forgot that he had kind of wrapped it up into that newspaper he had handed to Mr. Potter, and even if he would have remembered that and gone to him, he could have easily denied that there was any money in there, and it was, your word against mine, basically. And this was the final straw. This hit George Bailey really hard, because essentially he was facing the idea that there was misappropriation of funds, and as the owner of the company, he must have been stealing from the company. In the end, it fell to him, and this was just too much for George Bailey to think about. Like, how am I going to be able to live with this insurmountable trial that's come my way? Essentially, it was $8,000 that they had lost, and this was probably 1930s, early 40s time frame. So let's just say 1940. And what would that be in today's money, right? $100,000 more. It was a lot of money. And he went around looking for options. He went to Mr. Potter at the bank and said, I don't know how this happened. It was an honest mistake. We're looking for it. We will find it. Can you give me a little bit more time? Can I get another loan on my house, on my life insurance policy? And which his life insurance policy was for $15,000, but his equity in that policy was, $600 or something. And Mr. Potter just laughed him out of there and basically told him, "You're worth more dead than alive." And George, totally defeated, went home, like a lot of us do sometimes with our problems from work. We take them home to our family, and little things that our wife or kids say bother us because, maybe their little cares seem trivial compared to what we're dealing with, and we're trying our best. We don't just blurt out, "Hey, I lost this money," or "this horrible thing happened at work." You want to be strong. You want to say, this is my problem. This is not something my wife or kids need to hear about or worry about. But you can't help but show your true emotions and get frustrated. He was frustrated with his daughter practicing on the piano, his kids asking for help in spelling something for this card that was going to be sent to Santa. He was looking at this old house that was kind of a money pit and thinking, we don't have money for this. Kind of you're hyper focused on the things you don't have all of a sudden when something big like this happens. I've definitely been guilty of this myself. And it's enough to drive a man to the brink. And so after some exchanges with his family and even a teacher over the phone, because his daughter came home sick or whatever, he stormed out of the house, and his wife and kids could tell that, something was terribly wrong with their husband and father. And so they started praying, and one of the kids asked the mom, should we pray for Daddy? And she said, yes, pray really hard. And then through a couple of other exchanges with people in the town, he ran his car into a tree. His day was just getting worse and worse, to the point where, he even said a prayer under his voice, basically like, I'm not a praying man, but if there's anything you can do to help me figure this out, please do it. And oh man, it's such a good film, and I hope that you will all take the opportunity to watch it. But he goes to a bridge to jump on a cold, blizzardy night into the icy waters below. And just as he's about to do that, he hears someone else, screaming, help, help, because they were drowning in the water. And that, he went into default mode of Mr. Nice guy, good guy, do what's right. And he went to save this man. He pulled him in, and there was a little building by the bridge for the bridge operator or whatever, bridge attendant, and was able to get out of some of his wet clothes and dry them by the fire in this little building. And that's where this man, who was supposedly drowning, told George that, you're welcome, I just saved your life. And George was like, what are you talking about? I just saved your life. And the man told him, no, I'm your guardian angel, Clarence, and I jumped in and acted like I was drowning because I knew that was the only way to stop you from jumping. And of course, George thought this man was crazy. And through some exchanges back and forth, George said something like, I wish I was never born, or something to that effect. And Clarence kind of looked up to the heavens and kind of asked Joseph, who was his senior angel or whatever, and said, what do you think about that? And they decided that was a good idea. So they made it as if George Bailey had never been born. And George, obviously didn't believe it, and he was like, well, I gotta get out of here. I gotta go here or there. I'm gonna talk to somebody. He goes to the local bar or pub where he knows the owner, and is frustrated to see that they don't know who he is. He has a former employer, pharmacist from his past, come into the bar, and he's a drunken bum because George Bailey wasn't there to save him from making a big mistake early on in his life, so he had to go to prison. And anyways, he just, the world was upside down to the point where he was thrown out of the bar, and as he was walking around, he saw that the town that he lived in was no longer called Bedford Falls. It was called Pottersville. Sound familiar? Kind of like Back to the Future 2, where Biff had gone crazy because certain things didn't happen. And yeah, anyway, same type of thing. So at Pottersville, and the location where his old savings and loan used to be was now like a casino or strip club or some seedy place, and that's kind of what the town was, just a heartless, money-grubbing town, if you will. thanks to Mr. Potter, who was unchecked by George Bailey, his father, and others, because George Bailey in this scenario was never born. And so he got to see, he found that his wife never married, and she was working at the library, and this was an old film, so they use the term old maid, which isn't necessarily politically correct anymore, right? And he was just all weirded out and saw that, wow, okay, this is horrible, and this is not my life. People hate me. They think I'm a bum. And he comes to realize how valuable his life was to himself and to others. And he wished and pleaded with his guardian angel, Clarence, to just let him go back. And then, just like in, A Christmas Carol, kind of discovers himself back where he was, and that he is alive, and the town is called Bedford Falls. He is married. The cab driver knows who he is. He's just elated by these simple things. And he goes home, finds that his wife isn't there, but I believe his uncle and business partner is excited, like, oh, you'll never know what happened. The bank examiners are there. I forgot to mention them earlier, but they saw that things were amiss with the savings and loan, and are investigating. And George doesn't care. He's like, "Oh, hi, Mr. Bank Examiner. Great to see you." And just as he's kind of getting settled in and greeting his children again, his wife comes in with several people from the town, and they have money to give him, to help him, to help save his business, save the town, save him. People that he had loaned money to before, just all came in to where there were tens and thousands of dollars that came in, and his brother, who at this point had gone off to war and is now a war hero and celebrated, and he raised a toast to his brother, George Bailey, the richest man in town. And obviously, from a monetary perspective, he wasn't the richest. Mr. Potter was, right? But from all of the ways that really matter, his family, his friends, his health, his impact on the community. He was the richest man in town. And so I took way longer than I expected to kind of break down that film for those who haven't watched it. And obviously I've allowed myself to get more emotional than I expected to. But it's that good. And I hope that all of you will know that your life matters and that the world is better having you in it. And I hope and pray that you will know that, and that when things look their darkest, that if you'll look to your blessings or the things that you have, the opportunities that you will and can create, that you will be able to get through that dark time, that you will be able to see through it, that you will be able to see a path through it, and that taking one's life or ending it is never the right answer. There's a way in all things, you know. On this program we talk about creating, and a lot of times that has to do with creating art or design or a tool or a website, you know, being a programmer, being a musician. But creativity can apply to anything. You know, it can apply to creating opportunities, you know, rather than thinking I've only got this much money to work with or these many resources or this much time or whatever. You know, if I could find more time, if it were to magically appear, or if I were to get that raise, or if someone would give me a hand, I could then finally maybe kind of sort of do something. But you're not going to find time. You got to make time. You can't rely on someone else to be looking out for your needs and paying you more. You gotta dig deep and figure out, how can I be worth more? And is that me doing something at my day job to create more value and therefore more compensation for myself? Or is that me coming up with an idea of something that I can build, create, and sell? You know, in this day and age of the internet and the democratization of creation in all things, I mean, we've got all these amazing tools, you know, the Adobe suite, 3D applications, we've got laser cutters and printers and 3D printers, and you know, the list goes on. For relatively small investment, you can invest in one of those tools and create a business making something that you can sell, you know. Or obviously if you're selling physical things, that's harder to scale. Is there some type of a digital download that you can create? and sell. And that's not to say that this is easy or that these are the only things you can do. But I've seen in my own life, when there's something that I want or need, or something that I want to attain, that it requires effort. It requires doing it again and again and sacrificing time and doing things that others might say are silly or a waste of time. You know, here you're spending all this time doing this podcast, and, you know, you get a relatively small, I don't have an audience of millions, it's definitely much lower than that. There's no direct monetary now I'm getting depressed, I'm sorry. Just kidding. No, yeah, there's no direct monetary benefit for me doing this podcast right now, or building a YouTube channel, creating tutorials, and I've been doing both of them for over a year now, and it's like, people could definitely question that. Who do you think you are? You're not a young man anymore. You don't maybe resonate like you once would have. If I was a 20-something-year-old person, and those are the prime audience of people who are consuming this content, anything I produce, they're just gonna be all over it because I'm one of them or whatever. I'm not. I'm old. I'm crotchety. I'm gonna be 45 in a couple of months. Well, let's be honest, in like 1.5 months, right? But guess what? I know that my people are out there, and it's just a matter of time before they find me. And whether they find me or not, I'm a better person for doing this. If nothing else, it's my own video diary. It's maybe it won't pan out in the way I think it would, like huge sponsorships for the podcast or the YouTube channel, or I don't make thousands of dollars for every episode that I publish or whatever, but maybe when the time comes to work with somebody or work for somebody, them seeing that I do this, may play a part in them choosing me, right? Or, which is definitely a likely thing, is by me being in the habit of kind of philosophizing, whatever the term is, thinking, verbalizing my thoughts about creation, about the process, about being a creative leader, about AI, about the future, about the past, about what's truly important in life. That helps to sharpen my opinions and helps to make me a better communicator, helps me to be able to be clear about how I feel about one topic or another. If I hadn't been doing this podcast, I don't think I would have kind of been able to articulate my stance on AI, for example. And that's something that comes up all the time in conversations. And because I've talked about it and thought about it in preparation for this podcast, when someone asks me about it at a Christmas party, it's a sister-in-law or something, and I'm able to just say this is my thoughts on that exact subject. And it makes it that much better of an interaction, right? So you never know how these things are going to benefit you. And we have an idea, if we create something for monetary benefit, have an idea of how that is going to manifest itself. But the best part about it is as we put one foot in front of the other, we take that leap of faith and create something and put it out there in the wild and either get a response or no response, which is actually a response in the negative, probably, right? Then we're able to turn. We're able to make adjustments, try something different. And if we keep at it, eventually we're gonna figure it out. It's gonna, if our goal is to make more money and we're trying to sell something, first you try to sell this, you get feedback that people don't want that. Okay, what about this? Okay, oh, a couple people want that. All right, well, what about this? More people want that. Okay, let's double down on that. Do more of that. And if this percentage of the people I've told want that thing, if I tell more people, then, and that percentage holds up or even close to that, then I can see how this thing might scale, right? And we're learning, we're failing fast. And that takes me to another subject that I'd like to talk about, which is related to what I've already talked about. And this is about another dear friend and acquaintance. He was someone that I worked with, and he was, I've talked about him before, Brandon DeWitt, co-founder at MX. He passed away a couple years ago from cancer that he'd been battling for 6+ years. And I didn't know him prior to his diagnosis, but I've heard from him and others that it was more about him, it was more about Brandon at that time. What can I do to help my career? Which is, how we all are, right? That's, we're naturally narcissistic to some degree, and that's part of evolving and becoming a better human, is to learn that it's not just about me. But anyways, he used his hardship, his super hard thing of being diagnosed with the terminal form of stage 4 cancer, given months to live. He was able to change his perspective on life and realized, like George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, that life is beautiful. And so he ended every one of his presentations, keynotes, talks with that phrase, life is beautiful. And he had a colorful typographical version that he'd found somewhere, I believe, with that phrase, life is beautiful. And he was able to kind of land on several aphorisms, like pain is the luxury of the living, right? So if you're dealing with heartache, if you're dealing with physical pain, if you're dealing with exhaustion, stress, whatever, is something that is an indicator that you are alive, and that in and of itself, as horrible and painful as it is something that you are experiencing because you are alive. And thankfully, in most of our cases, it's temporary. And there is opposition in all things, right? If we didn't know what pain is or felt like, then we wouldn't really be able to appreciate what the lack of pain feels like. I've talked about some of the things I've struggled with, which are minuscule and super minor compared to some of the people I've talked about today. Like arthritis and gout, When I'm not experiencing that, I'm just so grateful, like I can walk to the restroom without having to hold on to the walls and position my foot in a weird way to kind of hobble over there, I can just do it with ease, or you know what I'm talking about. So I am grateful for my challenges and the perspective that it gives me, the empathy for others that it gives me. I used to see old people hobbling around and I thought, what in the heck? Why are they moving so gingerly? They're just old and slow? No. Those people are probably in pain. And they're unlike a kid, a baby, a child, a toddler who's in pain. They realize through experience that other people have their problems and it's not all about them, and they're just going to go about their business and slowly, hobble across the street and not tell everybody that comes their way, like, help me, I'm in pain, give me pity, which is what we do as a little kid. We trip and we skin our knee and we cry and we want our mommy, and we just can't believe this horrible thing has happened to us, and it's all about us, right? And that's something that I've really become, I've been able to evolve my thinking, if you will, about that whole thing. So, anyways, life is beautiful, and I'm grateful for my life. I'm grateful to have you in it. You know who you are, each of you. Grateful for your support in what I do, and I hope that I can support you with the things that you'll go and do, because I know they're going to be great. And we've got ourselves another year where we get to decide, how am I going to change my perspective on things? How am I going to make this the best year ever? 2024. I mean, I almost struggle to say those numbers, 2024, because it just seems like I'm talking crazy talk. That just sounds so far into the future, I still feel like it's 2019, which is still well into the 21st century, right? And here we are, 2024. And with this being my last episode of Create or Die in the year 2023, I just want to kind of recap, if you will, or talk to you a little bit for a moment here, if you'll indulge me, on some of the things that I, wanted to accomplish in this year. I had a goal of, I talked about 52 weeks in a year, right? And so if you do one thing a week, that would be 52 things by the end of the year, right? I talked about creating one piece of stock art that I could upload to iStock, Getty, or TurboSquid or something. And that if I had done that consistently, one a week, I could turn around and say, wow, 52 new things. I haven't looked up the exact number, but I didn't get one every week. And there were several weeks I went without uploading any. But then there were also other weeks where I uploaded 5 or 6 in 1 week to kind of make up, or just happen to be in that right mode. So I'll try to find the exact number and share it with you at some point, but instead of 52, I believe there were probably 25 things that I uploaded. But prior year, it was maybe 5 to 10. The year before that, it was 0. The 7, 8 years before that, it was 0 as well. So 25, that's huge. And if I hadn't have set a goal for one a week, 52, then I probably would have, just casually hit 5 again, or maybe even 0. So setting those goals, while I didn't achieve it, I kind of pivoted midway in the year and decided there were other things that I wanted to focus on. I didn't hit that number. But again, how grateful I am for the number I did hit. And I'm grateful for the energy I put into my consulting work, which took up a lot more time than I expected it to in 2023. I got to work with a lot of cool businesses, and it's changed the trajectory of my life. And in 2024, I plan to share just how. And I look forward to those conversations, those one-sided conversations with you. And I'd like them to be dual-sided. If you'll drop some comments and reach out to me through createordie.net, send me a message. I'm quick to reply. For realsies. So that's just one example. I had a goal of buying a boat for my family and finding a way to make that happen. And for those of you who listen to this program, that did happen. And there are responsibilities. There's a different set of heart that comes from owning something like that, but I wanted to sign up for that, and I'm glad I did. And it was an amazing first year of boat ownership, and I look forward to those summer months again. And maybe you can join me on the lake. Anyways, congrats on all the things you accomplished in 2023. And I wish you the happiest of New Year's and merriest of holidays as they wrap up. And until next time, my friends, until next year, Keep on creating. Create or die.